Have you ever imagined what it means to fight for your life from the very first second of existence? This is a story of a premature baby who refused to live, a cleaning lady who held painful secrets, and a CEO who discovered that love doesn't understand social class. This is a narrative about how a lullaby can save lives and unite shattered hearts. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching this video from? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button to support emotional stories like this. Now prepare your heart, because this journey will make you feel every emotion. The rain lashed violently against the windows of Mount Sinai Hospital, one of the most prestigious in New York City, on a March dawn that seemed to have no end. On the 8th floor, in the NICU, a tiny body was fighting against all medical statistics. Arthur Donovan weighed only 2 pounds and 14 ounces, and his immature lungs worked with the help of sophisticated machines that beeped constantly, a reminder of the fragility of that life. Daniel Donovan, 38, the CEO of one of the state's largest real estate development firms, sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair next to the incubator. He was wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago, a rumpled dress shirt, bespoke trousers stained with coffee, his tie loosened and hanging from his neck. His red, swollen eyes couldn't look away from his son. Brown hair disheveled, stubble on his jaw, trembling hands holding a cold cup of coffee he didn't even remember getting. Mr. Donovan, the soft voice of Dr. Evelyn Reed, pulled him from his trance. She was the head neonatologist, a 45-year-old woman with a compassionate gaze that had seen many miracles and many tragedies in that unit. "We need to talk." Daniel stood up, staggering, as if his legs had forgotten how to support the weight of so much grief. He followed the doctor to a small conference room with cold white walls, a generic landscape painting trying to humanize the hospital environment. "Clinically, Arthur is stable," the doctor began, choosing each word with care. "His lungs are responding well to the surfactant, there's no sign of intracranial hemorrhage, and the neurological exams are promising. But," there was always a but. Daniel closed his eyes. "But he isn't gaining weight, Mr. Donovan. In fact, he's lost another 1.5 ounces since yesterday. He cries constantly, refuses his feeding tube, and when he's not crying, he's in a state of apathy that worries us greatly." "What does that mean?" Daniel's voice came out hoarse, broken. The doctor sighed, taking off her glasses and massaging the bridge of her nose. "There's something we call hospitalism, or failure to thrive. Extreme preemies, especially those who go through trauma at birth, can develop a kind of resignation. They feel the absence of the mother, the womb, the heartbeat that rocked them. Arthur was born under traumatic circumstances. He lost his mother, and now he's in a clinical cold environment full of lights and machine noises." The words pierced Daniel like blades. Helena, his wife, the woman who laughed loudly, who danced barefoot through their home, who would put her hands on her belly and talk to Arthur for hours. Helena, who suddenly started bleeding at home at 7 months pregnant. Helena, who was rushed into emergency surgery. Helena, who held his hand and whispered, "Save our baby," before the anesthesia took hold. Helena, who had an uncontrollable hemorrhage during the C-section and didn't make it. 3 days. It had only been 3 days since Daniel had lost the love of his life and gained a son who seemed unwilling to stay in this world without her. "What do I do?" Daniel asked, and for the first time in his adult life, this man who commanded hundreds of employees, who closed multi-million-dollar deals, who never showed weakness, let the tears fall freely. "Doctor, tell me what to do. I'll give everything I have, everything, but tell me how to save my son." Dr. Reed gently touched his shoulder. "Daniel, medicine has done everything it can. Arthur needs something that no equipment, no medicine, no procedure can offer. He needs affection. He needs to feel loved, safe, wanted in this world. I know it sounds abstract, but premature babies die not just from clinical complications, but from a lack of will to live. They feel things, and Arthur is feeling an emptiness that we can't fill." When Daniel returned to the incubator, Arthur was crying again, a weak, faint cry, almost strengthless, but persistent, as if he were calling for someone who would never come. The businessman put his gloved hand through the incubator's porthole and gently touched his son's tiny hand. Arthur's fingers, so small they could barely wrap around one of his father's, didn't move. "I'm here, son," Daniel whispered, his voice thick. "Your daddy is here. Please don't give up. Please fight for both of us. Your mother gave her life for you. Don't let her sacrifice be in vain." But Arthur continued to cry, inconsolable, as if he didn't even recognize his father's presence. That night, Daniel pulled the chair closer, rested his head against the cold glass of the incubator, and closed his eyes. Outside, the rain continued to fall and the city slept, oblivious to the drama unfolding in that small, fluorescent-lit cube. At 3 in the morning, when the shift changed and the nurses did their handover, Daniel was still there, motionless, praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore, asking for a miracle that medicine said was impossible. And somewhere in that same hospital, in the silent corridors of the basement, a woman pushed a cleaning cart, carrying with her an old sorrow and a song she didn't know would save a life. Julia Miller was 32, but her hands looked like they belonged to someone much older. Calloused, rough, with short, clean nails, they were hands that had known hard work since childhood. She wore the dark blue uniform of the third-party cleaning service, simple pants, a blouse with a faded logo, white sneakers already yellowed with time, black hair pulled into a tight bun, a makeup-free face revealing deep, dark circles, but also a simple, natural beauty that resisted exhaustion. It was 11:45 p.m. when she reached the 8th floor, pushing her cart full of cleaning products, cloths and mops. The NICU hallway was always the quietest, just the constant hum of machines, the rhythmic beeping of monitors, and occasionally a baby's cry. "Good evening, Julia," greeted Nurse Brenda, a woman in her 50s who had worked there for decades. "Good evening, Miss Brenda. How are the little angels tonight? We have a tough case. That little baby there in Bay 3, Arthur. 7-month preemie. Mother passed away in childbirth. The poor little thing won't stop crying and isn't taking his feedings." Julia looked in the direction Brenda indicated and saw Daniel, slumped in the chair, his head hanging at an uncomfortable angle. Beside him, in the illuminated incubator, a tiny baby writhed, crying weakly. Something tightened in Julia's chest. An old, familiar pain, one she had spent the last 3 years trying to bury. "Can I go in to clean?" she asked, her voice softer. "Of course, just be careful not to wake the father. He practically lives here." Julia entered the bay silently, pulling on disposable shoe covers and grabbing her supplies. She started with the floor, moving with the efficiency of someone who had done this for years, but her eyes kept drifting back to the incubator, to that tiny baby who seemed so alone. As she began to wipe the counter near the incubator, without thinking, she started to hum. It was an old song, a lullaby her Grandma May used to sing to her as a child, back in West Virginia. "Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleepy, little baby. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses." Julia's voice was naturally sweet, soft, with a faint Appalachian lilt that softened the words. She sang quietly, almost whispering, more to herself than to anyone else. That's when she realized Arthur had stopped crying. Julia froze, cloth still in hand, and looked at the incubator. The baby's eyes, still so small, were half open. He wasn't crying anymore. He was just listening. With her heart pounding, Julia continued to sing, now more consciously. "Blacks and bays, dapples and greys, coach and 6 little horses. Hush-a-bye, don't you cry. Go to sleepy, little baby." The words came out loaded with an emotion Julia couldn't control. Tears began to roll silently down her face as she sang, because she remembered. She remembered another premature baby, another hospital, another life. Michael, her son, born at just 6 months, weighing a mere 1 pound, 8 ounces. Michael, whom she had held for only 18 days before his tiny lungs gave up. Michael, whom she sang to every night, until one morning the machines shrieked and the doctors rushed in, and she knew, without anyone having to say it, that he was gone. And then came the silence, the empty apartment, the crib that was never used, her husband, Rick, who couldn't bear the weight of her sadness and simply packed his bags one morning saying, "I need to move on, Julia, but you're stuck in the past." She never sang again. For 3 years she kept those songs locked in her chest, because to sing them meant to remember, and to remember meant feeling the agonizing pain of loss. But now, looking at Arthur, something broke inside her. That tiny baby needed those songs. He was calling, even without words, for a comfort that machines couldn't provide. Julia finished cleaning, still singing softly, and when she left the bay, Arthur was asleep for the first time in hours. Daniel remained asleep in the chair, oblivious to the small miracle that had just taken place. But Nurse Brenda had seen everything. "Julia," she called out as the cleaner passed the station, "did you see what happened? The baby stopped crying to your voice." "It was a coincidence, Miss Brenda," Julia replied quickly, wiping her tears on the back of her hand. "He must have just been tired. That was no coincidence. I've worked here for 28 years, girl, I've seen a lot of things. Some babies respond to stimuli we can't even imagine. Could you sing for him again tomorrow? Julia hesitated. Singing for Arthur meant opening wounds she tried to keep closed. It meant feeling everything all over again. But when she looked back through the glass of the bay and saw that tiny body finally at peace, she knew she had no choice. "I'll come tomorrow," she whispered. And so, every night that week, Julia entered Arthur's bay at 3 in the morning and sang while she cleaned. And every night, miraculously, the baby calmed down, stopped crying. Sometimes he even smiled, a small twitch of the lips that the doctors called a reflex but the nurses swore was real. Arthur began to gain weight. 2 ounces, then 2.5, then 3.5. The doctors didn't understand the sudden change, but the nurses knew. They had seen the power of a lullaby sung by a woman who knew exactly what that baby was feeling. Because Julia wasn't just a cleaner singing. She was a mother who had lost her child, offering another lonely baby the only gift she could give, the certainty that he was not alone in this frightening world. And she didn't know it yet, but those songs were about to change not only Arthur's life, but her own, in ways she could never have imagined. Daniel woke up with a terrible pain in his neck. The uncomfortable position in the plastic chair had taken its toll. He blinked, disoriented, and it took a few seconds to remember where he was. The clock on the wall read 6:30 a.m. Soft light was beginning to filter through the windows, announcing a new day. That's when he realized Arthur was quiet, not crying, not squirming. He was sleeping peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling in a calm rhythm. "Mr. Donovan," Nurse Brenda approached with a smile. "Good morning. Or maybe I should say good night, since you didn't even go home." Daniel pointed to his son, his voice still hoarse from sleep. "Is he okay?" "More than okay. He slept through the night. And look at this." She showed him a clipboard with charts. "He gained 3 ounces in the last 24 hours, took his entire feeding by tube without any regurgitation." Daniel felt the tears return, but this time they were tears of relief. "How? What changed?" Brenda looked at him with an enigmatic smile. "Let's just say your son found something that medicine forgot to prescribe. Love, in the form of lullabies sung by a cleaner with a heart of gold." And that's how Daniel learned about Julia. He spent the entire day waiting. He showered in the hospital locker room, changed into clean clothes his assistant brought, and ate something for the first time in days. But his mind was focused on one thing, meeting the woman who had accomplished what he could not, calming his son. When Julia entered the bay at 11 p.m., pushing her cart, she didn't expect to find Daniel awake, standing, looking directly at her. "Good evening," he said, and there was something in his voice that made Julia stop. "Good evening, sir," she replied, lowering her eyes, uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. "You're Julia." It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. I came to do the cleaning. May I—" "The nurses told me," Daniel interrupted softly, "about the songs, about how Arthur responds to your voice." Julia felt her face flush. "I just hum while I work, sir. I didn't mean to disturb or—" "Disturb?" Daniel took a step forward, and Julia could see his eyes were red, heavy with emotion. "You saved my son. You did what no doctor, no nurse, no multi-million-dollar piece of equipment could do. You made him want to live." Julia shook her head, tears already forming. "No, sir, I just—" "Please," Daniel's voice broke, "please tell me, why do you sing to him? How did you know what he needed?" It was then that everything crumbled. Julia, who had held her pain with pride for 3 years, who had built walls around her heart, felt those walls collapse in front of this man who understood loss as deeply as she did. "Because I know what he's feeling," she whispered, letting the tears fall. "I know what it's like to be in an incubator, alone, scared, feeling like no one is coming. Because I had a premature baby, Michael, and he didn't make it." Daniel stood in silence, absorbing every word. "He was born at 6 months, Julia continued, her voice trembling. "He weighed less than 1 pound, 8 ounces. I spent my nights singing to him, with my hand in the incubator, just like you do with Arthur. And for 18 days he fought. But on the 19th day, his little lungs, they just stopped. Julia, my husband couldn't take it. He said I cried too much, that I needed to move on. So he moved on, without me." She took a shaky breath. "And for 3 years I didn't sing again. I kept those songs locked deep inside because singing meant remembering. But when I saw Arthur, when I saw a baby so small, so alone, calling for a mother who can't come, I couldn't stay quiet." Daniel didn't think. He simply wrapped Julia in a hug, a desperate embrace of 2 people who had lost too much, who had cried too much, who carried invisible scars that only they could understand. "You didn't fail as a mother," Daniel said against her hair, his own voice thick. "You loved your son with every fiber of your being, and now you're offering that love to mine. Julia, you're an angel." They stayed like that for long minutes, crying together, releasing old pains that had never been truly processed. In the incubator beside them, Arthur slept peacefully, as if he sensed that something important was happening. When they finally separated, they both wiped their faces with their hands, half embarrassed by the intensity of the moment. "I don't know how to thank you," Daniel began. "You don't need to thank me, sir. I do it for me, too." Julia smiled sadly. "Taking care of Arthur is like a second chance, like being able to help in a way I couldn't help Michael." "Daniel," he corrected. "Call me Daniel. And please, Julia, please keep coming. Keep singing to him. I see the difference you make." "I'll come," she promised. "Every night, as long as Arthur needs me." That night, Daniel stayed awake as Julia cleaned the bay, singing softly. And for the first time since Helena died, he didn't feel completely alone in his suffering. There was someone there who understood, someone who knew what those holes in the chest, that weight on the shoulders, that constant fear of losing more, felt like. When Julia finished and said goodbye, Daniel looked at his son and whispered, "You chose well, Arthur. You chose an angel disguised as a cleaner to be your guardian." And Arthur, as if he understood, wiggled his tiny fingers in his sleep, a small smile playing on his tiny lips. 2 weeks later, Dr. Reed entered the bay with a genuine smile, a rare thing for a neonatologist who had seen so many tragedies. "We have good news," she announced, checking her chart. "Arthur has reached 4 pounds, 10 ounces. He's sucking properly, maintaining his body temperature, and has had no apneic episodes for 5 days. Mr. Donovan, your son is ready to go home." Daniel should have been ecstatic, but all he felt was panic. Home. The home he shared with Helena. The home where she had chosen the colors for the nursery, where she had assembled the crib with her own hands, where there were photos of them smiling everywhere. The home that was now silent, empty, haunted by memories, and without Julia. "Doctor?" The doctor noticed his hesitation. "Sorry, of course, that's wonderful news." But it didn't feel wonderful. That night, when Julia arrived for her shift, Daniel was waiting for her with an anxious expression. "Julia, Arthur was discharged. We're going home tomorrow." Her smile was immediate and sincere. "That's incredible. Daniel, he's healed. He's strong. You must be so happy." "I am," he lied. Then he sighed. "I'm terrified." Julia pulled up a chair and sat next to him, a gesture that had become natural between them over the past few weeks. "Terrified of what?" "Of not managing without you. Of him getting agitated again, refusing to eat. That I'm not enough." "Daniel," Julia took his hand, a gentle but firm touch. "You're his father. You've learned everything. You know how to change a diaper, prepare a bottle, identify when he has gas or just wants to be held. You're enough. But what if he needs you, the songs? Then I'll teach you the songs," she said simply, "and you'll sing to him. It will be different from my voice, but it will be his father's voice, and that's even more special." Daniel wanted to believe her. He really did. The Donovan mansion was in a high-end gated community in Greenwich, Connecticut. It had 6 bedrooms, a pool, immense gardens, 3 living rooms. Everything luxurious, everything perfectly decorated by Helena, with her impeccable taste, and everything utterly devoid of life. Daniel walked in carrying Arthur in his car seat, accompanied by 2 specialized nannies he had hired, Marisa and Luciana, both with international certifications and flawless references. "Welcome home, son," he whispered, but the words sounded hollow. The first few hours were calm. Arthur slept. The nannies organized the nursery, checked all the equipment, prepared bottles. Daniel stood watching his son in the crib that Helena had hand-painted with little gold stars. Then Arthur woke up and started to cry. Marissa picked him up, rocked him, offered a bottle. Arthur refused, turning his head. "It must be colic," she diagnosed, massaging his little belly, but Arthur kept crying. Luciana tried changing his diaper, checking if anything was bothering him. Nothing. "Maybe he's cold," Daniel suggested, adding another blanket. But Arthur thrashed, crying even louder. 2 hours. 3 hours. Arthur cried non-stop, a desperate, inconsolable cry. The nannies tried everything. Recorded music, white noise, motion, silence. Nothing worked. Daniel felt completely helpless. He held his son, walked the room, tried to hum Julia's song, but it wasn't the same. Arthur knew. He felt that something was wrong, that someone was missing. At 11 p.m., with Arthur still crying and the nannies visibly exhausted, Daniel made a decision. He picked up his phone and called the hospital, asking to speak to the cleaning service management. He got Julia's number. She answered on the third ring, her voice sleepy. "Hello? Julia, it's me, Daniel. I'm sorry to call so late. He stopped, because in the background Arthur was wailing. "Julia, I need you." There was a pause. "What happened?" "Is he okay?" "Physically, yes, but he won't stop crying. We've tried everything. He needs you, Julia. He needs your voice, your presence." "Daniel, I can't just show up there. I'm not a nanny. I don't have training." "Please." His voice broke. "Please, Julia. I know it's a lot to ask, but my son, he's suffering, and I don't know what else to do." Julia closed her eyes. She could hear Daniel's desperation, Arthur's cries in the background, and her mother's heart, the one she thought had died with Michael, ached painfully. "Send me the address," she said softly. "I'm on my way." 40 minutes later, an Uber pulled up to the community gate. Julia got out, wearing simple jeans, a white t-shirt, her hair down for the first time Daniel had seen her. She looked smaller without the uniform, more vulnerable. When Daniel opened the front door, holding Arthur, who was now crying weakly, as if running out of strength, his eyes shone with gratitude. "You came," he whispered. "Of course I came," she replied, already holding out her arms. "Let me take him." The moment Arthur was placed in Julia's arms, something magical happened. He stopped crying instantly. His teary little eyes opened and fixed on her, as if to say, "Where were you?" Julia began to sing, that same lullaby, and Arthur simply relaxed. His tense little body went limp, his breathing slowed, and in less than 5 minutes he was sleeping deeply against her chest. The nannies stared, dumbfounded. "How did you—" Marissa began. "Love," Julia answered simply, rocking gently. "It's not technique, it's love." Daniel watched the scene with a mixture of admiration and despair, because now he knew. Arthur didn't just need Julia's songs, he needed her. And Daniel had no idea how to solve this without destroying the dignity and independence of this extraordinary woman who had appeared in their lives like a gift from fate. Julia stayed until 3 a.m., rocking Arthur, singing to him until she was sure he was deeply asleep. Only then did she gently place him in the crib and cover him with a blanket. "He'll be fine now," she whispered to Daniel. "But I have to go. I have work tomorrow." "Julia, wait." Daniel walked her to the door. The nannies had gone to bed and the house was silent. "Can we talk?" They sat in the gourmet kitchen, an immense room with Italian marble and high-end appliances. Julia felt out of place in the magazine-perfect setting, but Daniel made coffee and served her with a naturalness that surprised her. "Thank you," he said, pushing the cup toward her, "for coming, for saving the night, for saving my son. Again." "I couldn't let him suffer," Julia replied, looking down at her coffee. "But Daniel, this can't happen again. You have to find a way to manage without me. I have my job, my life." "Leave your job." Julia looked up, surprised. "What?" Daniel took a deep breath, as if about to jump off a cliff. "Leave your job at the hospital. Come work for me, as Arthur's nanny. I'll pay you whatever you want, offer full benefits, health insurance, paid time off." "No." Julia's answer was immediate and firm. Daniel blinked, taken aback. "Julia, I know you care about Arthur. You just came all the way out here in the middle of the night, and that's exactly why the answer is no." Julia stood up, her eyes flashing with a fierce dignity. "Daniel, I'm a cleaner. That's what I know how to do. I clean hospitals, bathrooms, hallways. I'm not trained to be a nanny. I didn't study child development. I don't have certifications. Those 2 women you hired, how they have qualifications. But they couldn't calm my son, because what Arthur needs isn't technique, it's affection," Julia retorted. "But I can't, Daniel. I can't give up my dignity, my honest job to become, I don't know, the live-in girl who takes care of the rich boss's baby. What will people think? What will they say? Who cares what people say? I care." Tears started to roll down Julia's face. "I've already lost so much in my life, Daniel. I lost my son, I lost my marriage, I lost any sense of happiness I had. The only thing I have left is my dignity, my honest work, and I won't throw that away, no matter how much money you offer." Daniel was silent, taking in every word. Then, to Julia's shock, he knelt, literally knelt on the kitchen floor, his hands clasped, looking up at her with watery eyes. "Then don't be my nanny," he said, his voice thick. "Be my cleaner. Keep doing what you know how to do, the job you're proud of. But please, Julia, please, come work here. Clean my house, mop my floors, organize my kitchen. But at the end of the day, when you finish your tasks, sing to my son. Just that. Just sing to him. Julia looked at this powerful man, a man worth a fortune, kneeling on the floor, begging. Not for wealth, not for power, but for his child, for love. Daniel, get up, please. Not until you accept. He grabbed her hand. Julia, I know this isn't ideal. I know you want to keep your independence, your identity. But my son, Arthur, needs you. And I'm not too proud to beg if it means giving him what he needs. Julia closed her eyes, feeling the tears fall. She thought of Arthur, that tiny baby who had somehow found his way into her broken heart. She thought of Michael, of how she would have given anything for someone to save him. And she thought that maybe, just maybe, saving Arthur was a way to honor her son's memory. I have conditions, she said finally, her voice trembling. Daniel stood up immediately, hopeful. Anything. I keep living in my apartment. I am not moving in here no matter what you say. I come in the morning and I go home at night. Julia took a deep breath. And you cannot treat me like a servant in front of other people. I don't want pity. I don't want us to pretend to be friends. I work for you, that's it. It's a professional relationship. I agree to everything, Daniel said quickly, except the last part. Daniel, Julia, we are friends. You know my deepest pain. I know yours. You saved my son. You're saving me. I can't pretend this is just professional because it's not. But I promise to respect your boundaries. I promise not to embarrass you. Just don't ask me to pretend you mean nothing more than an employee. Julia looked into his eyes and saw sincerity, and exhaustion, and a loneliness that mirrored her own. Okay, she whispered. I accept. But one last condition. You pay me the fair salary for a housekeeper. Not a penny more. I will not accept charity. Julia, take it or leave it, Daniel. He sighed, but nodded. Done. They shook hands, sealing an agreement that would change both of their lives forever. A week later, Julia had her own routine in the mansion. She arrived at 8 a.m., cleaned each room meticulously, organized, cooked. The nannies were dismissed. Daniel said he no longer needed them. In the afternoon, after her tasks, Julia would sing to Arthur, rock him, play with him in the rare moments he was awake and alert. And at night, she would return to her simple apartment in the Bronx, carrying a secret in her heart she told no one. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't feel completely empty. Arthur flourished. In 2 weeks, he gained 10 ounces. He smiled frequently. His little eyes followed Julia wherever she went. When she sang, he would grow quiet, listening, as if her voice was the most important thing in the world. And Daniel watched it all with a mixture of gratitude and something else he didn't have the courage to name yet, something that looked dangerously like love. 3 months went by. Arthur now weighed 11 pounds, a chubby, healthy baby who laughed loudly and held Julia's finger tightly whenever she picked him up. The bleak prognosis from his first days seemed like a distant nightmare. It was a Friday night. Julia had finished her tasks and was about to leave when she realized Daniel hadn't come home from the office yet. He usually arrived at 6 p.m., eager to see his son, but today it was already 9 p.m. Her cell phone rang. Julia? Daniel's voice sounded strange, muffled. Sorry, I'm stuck in traffic. I'll still be about 40 minutes. It's okay. Arthur already ate and is asleep. I can stay until you... Julia, he interrupted her. Are you okay? Your voice... And that's when she heard him sniffle, a quick sound he tried to cover with a cough. Daniel, are you crying? Silence. No, I'm fine. Just tired. Where are you exactly? In the office parking garage. I couldn't... His voice failed. I couldn't drive yet. Julia didn't think twice. Stay right there. I'm coming to get you. When Julia arrived at the glass and steel office tower in Midtown, where Donovan Holdings was located, she found Daniel sitting in his car, hands on the wheel, red eyes fixed on nothing. She tapped gently on the window. He opened the door, and before he could say anything, he simply collapsed. He began to cry, that deep, visceral kind of crying from someone who has held everything in for too long. Julia hugged him right there in the empty parking garage, letting him pour out months of repressed grief. She said nothing, just held him, stroked his hair, let him shatter, because sometimes the only way to be put back together is to break completely first. When Daniel could finally speak, his voice was hoarse. It's her birthday today, Helena's. She would have been 36. Julia closed her eyes, understanding. And I forgot, he sobbed. I spent the whole day in meetings, solving problems, And only when I saw the calendar tonight did I remember. What kind of husband am I that I forget my own wife's birthday? Daniel, look at me. Julia held his face in her hands. You are not a bad husband. You are a father who is fighting to survive, to raise your son, to move forward even when it seems impossible. Helena wouldn't be mad at you for forgetting a date. She would be proud to see you taking care of Arthur. How do you do it? Daniel asked, his red eyes searching hers. How do you move on after losing everything? Julia sighed, letting him go and leaning against the car next to him. Who says I've moved on? She gave a bitter laugh. Daniel, there are days I wake up, and the first thing I think about is Michael, what he would look like now, at 3 years old, the birthday I should be planning. And some days the pain is so strong I can barely get out of bed. But you get up, you keep going, because I don't have a choice. Julia looked up at the night sky, the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. After Rick left, I had to choose. Either I drown in the sadness or I learn to swim. So I swim, every single day. Even when my arms are tired and my lungs burn, I keep swimming. Daniel was silent, absorbing that. You are so much stronger than you think, he said finally. And so are you. Julia nudged him gently with her shoulder. Look at everything you've done these past few months. Kept your company running, took care of Arthur, learned to be a father alone. Helena would be proud. I'm not alone, Daniel corrected, looking at her. You're here. The air between them changed. It became thick, charged with something unsaid. Julia felt her heart speed up. Daniel, come on, he said, standing up and holding out his hand. There's something I want to show you. They drove in silence to Woodlawn Cemetery, which closed at 10 p.m. But the groundskeeper knew Daniel and let them in, just for 15 minutes. The path was lit by small lights along the tree-lined avenues. Daniel stopped in front of a white marble headstone with gold lettering. Helena Christine Donovan, beloved wife and mother. Your love remains in every beat of our son's heart. Hi, honey, Daniel said softly, kneeling and placing his hand on the cold stone. Sorry I forgot your birthday. I brought someone I want you to meet. Well, someone you already know in a way. Julia approached, kneeling beside him. This is Julia, Daniel continued, the tears returning. She saved our son, Helena. When I couldn't, when the doctors couldn't, she did. She made him want to live. He looked at Julia. And I know you're here, Helena. I know you can hear me. So I want to thank you for sending Julia to us because I know it was you. You were the one who put her in that hallway, at that hour, singing those songs. You chose her to take care of our baby. Julia felt tears rolling down her cheeks. It was a beautiful idea, that Helena, somehow, had orchestrated this meeting. I'll take care of him, Julia whispered to the headstone. I promise. I'll love him as if he were my own. And I'll take care of Daniel too because he needs it. Daniel looked at her, surprised by the intimacy of that promise. They stayed there for long minutes, two broken hearts kneeling before a third person who had bound their destinies in an impossible-to-predict way. When they finally stood up and walked back to the car, Daniel took Julia's hand. She didn't pull away. Thank you, he said, for coming to get me, for being here, for everything. You're welcome, she replied softly. Neither of them mentioned that they were still holding hands, or that it felt far too right to be just friendship, or that they were beginning to depend on each other in ways that went far beyond professional, because some things were too scary to name out loud. But hearts know. They always know. In the following weeks, something subtly shifted between them. Daniel started coming home earlier from work. Julia started staying later, always finding one more thing to clean or organize. They ate dinner together with Arthur asleep in one of their laps, talking about everything and nothing. Daniel told her about the struggles at his company, the complicated contracts, the problematic employees. Julia talked about her childhood in West Virginia, about her grandmother who raised her, about how hard it was to come to New York alone at 18 looking for a better life. They laughed. They cried. They shared comfortable silences, and Arthur watched it all with his intelligent little eyes, as if he knew something special was growing in that once empty house. One night, after Julia put Arthur to bed, she came downstairs and found Daniel in the living room, looking at old photos on his laptop, pictures from his wedding to Helena, vacations, happy moments frozen in time. Do you feel guilty? She asked softly, sitting beside him on the sofa. For what? For being happy again? For laughing? For not thinking about her every second of the day? Daniel closed the laptop and looked at Julia. Every single day. I wake up feeling like a traitor. Me too, she admitted. When I hold Arthur and feel that happiness, that love, I immediately think, How can I love another baby when mine isn't here? And the guilt just eats me alive. But you're not replacing Michael, Daniel said, taking her hand naturally, as if it were already a habit. You're honoring him, giving another baby the love you would have given him. Then you're not replacing Helena either. Julia squeezed his hand. You're honoring her sacrifice, giving her son the life she wanted him to have. They sat like that, hands intertwined, staring into space, processing old losses and new possibilities. Julia, Daniel said finally, turning to her, I need to tell you something. Her heart sped up. What? But before he could speak, Arthur started to cry upstairs. They both laughed, the moment broken. Later, Daniel said, getting up, I'll go see what he wants. But later didn't come that night, or the next, because both of them were too afraid to name what was growing between them, afraid of betraying memories, afraid of getting hurt again, afraid that admitting the feelings would make them too real. So they continued in that delicate dance, almost touching but never quite, almost saying but never verbalizing, stuck in a limbo between friendship and something much, much deeper, until an unexpected event would force them both to confront what they truly felt. 6 months had passed since Julia started working in the mansion. Arthur was now 8 months old, a robust baby who was already trying to crawl and babbled constantly. He would call out "Mama" when he saw Julia, and his little face would light up every time she entered the room. Daniel watched this with a mixture of happiness and a painful clarity. Arthur saw Julia as his mother, and he had been seeing Julia as much more than an employee for a long time. It was a Sunday. Julia normally didn't work on Sundays, but Daniel had asked her to come for a special barbecue. She arrived wearing a dress for the first time, a simple, light blue sundress that accented her eyes and made her look younger, less tired. You look beautiful, Daniel said when he opened the door, and immediately blushed. Sorry, Thank you, Julia laughed, blushing too. You look different, too. He had dressed up, white polo shirt, dark jeans, hair combed. For the first time in months, he looked like the successful CEO he was, not the exhausted father sleeping in his clothes. The barbecue was intimate, just the two of them and Arthur. Daniel had prepared everything. The steak was marinating, the patio table was set with flowers. There was even a bottle of wine, which Julia eyed suspiciously, not used to drinking. Daniel, what's going on? She asked, suspicious. Why all this? I can't do something special for the person who saved my son and my sanity. You can, but this feels like a date, he completed, smiling nervously. Maybe it is. Julia's heart leaped. Daniel. Julia, I need to say something, and if I don't say it now, I'll keep putting it off forever. He took a deep breath. These last few months with you they're what kept me alive. Not just functioning, but truly alive. You make me laugh. You make me want to be better. And when you hold Arthur, when you sing to him, when you love him like he's yours, his voice failed. Julia, I've fallen in love with you. The world seemed to stop. Julia froze, her glass of juice in her hand, eyes wide. I know it soon, Daniel continued quickly. I know Helena passed away less than a year ago. I know you're still healing your own wounds. And I know you might think I'm confusing gratitude with love. But I'm not, Julia. I love you. I love who you are. I love your strength, your kindness, your enormous heart. And I know Arthur loves you too. He calls you Mama, Julia, because that's what you are to him. Tears began to roll down Julia's face. Daniel, I can't. You don't have to answer now, he said quickly. Just think about it, please. Because if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, Julia, we could have something real, a family. The three of us. People will say, Karashi began, her voice trembling. That you're a gold digger? Daniel finished. That you seduced the rich widowed boss? That you're using my son to get money? Yes, they will. And it won't be easy. My friends, my family, the employees at my company, many will judge. But Julia, he stepped closer, taking her hands. I don't care, because I know who you are. I know you saved me when I was drowning. I know you gave my son the love he needed to survive. And I know that anyone who thinks badly of you doesn't deserve to be in our lives. Julia looked at this man, so different from the husband who had abandoned her when she needed him most. Daniel hadn't run from the pain, he had faced it, and he was here vulnerable, offering his heart even knowing she could destroy it. And Arthur, she whispered, him calling me Mama. Isn't that betraying Helena? Helena is gone, Julia. The words came out harsh but necessary. She's gone and I'm alive, and my son needs a mother, not a nanny, not a person who sings to him. A mother, someone to love him unconditionally. And that person is you. It's always been you. Suddenly, Julia began to cry. Not delicate tears, but deep sobs that shook her entire body. Daniel pulled her into a hug, and she clung to him as if she were drowning. "I love you too," she sobbed against his chest. "I try not to feel it. I try to convince myself it's just gratitude or confusion. But I love you, Daniel, and I love Arthur, as if he came from me. But I'm so scared." "Of what?" "Of being happy again." She lifted her face, her red eyes meeting his. "Because the last time I was happy, everything was ripped away from me. What if it happens again? What if I let myself love you both completely and what if it doesn't?" Daniel interrupted softly, wiping her tears with his thumbs. "What if we get years and years together? What if we raise Arthur, and maybe have other children and grow old together? What if we deserve this second chance, Julia?" She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to. Daniel went back into the living room, and when he returned, he was kneeling, in his hand, a small blue velvet box. "This was my grandmother's," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple gold ring with a small diamond. "It's not big, it's not extravagant, but it has 80 years of history, from a marriage that lasted 60 years, of real love, and I want it to be yours." "Daniel," Julia covered her mouth with her hands. "Marry me, Julia, not because you work here, not because Arthur needs you. Marry me because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. I want to wake up every day and see your face. I want to grow old by your side. I want to raise our son, yes, our son, because Arthur is as much yours as he is mine now, and who knows, give him siblings. I want everything, Julia, everything we lost, we can build together." Julia looked at the ring, at Daniel, at the house where Arthur was playing on the rug, oblivious to the moment that would change all of their lives. She thought of Michael, of how he would have loved to have a father like Daniel, a home like this, a life full of love, and she thought that maybe, just maybe, loving Arthur completely wasn't betraying Michael, it was honoring him. "People are going to talk," she said, but her voice no longer held fear, only acceptance. "Let them. They'll say I'm a gold digger. Let them. They'll judge. Let them." Julia took a deep breath. "Then yes." Daniel blinked. "Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, Daniel Donovan." A smile started to form through her tears. "Yes, to all of it, to the unlikely family, to the judgments we'll face, to the chance to be happy again. Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if his grandmother knew somehow that this ring was destined for Julia. Then he pulled her into a kiss. It was their first kiss, salty with tears, desperate, full of months of unresolved tension. It was a kiss of two people who had lost everything and now dared to believe they could have it all again. When they separated, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. From the living room rug, Arthur clapped his hands and shouted, "Mama!" And they laughed even harder, because even the baby approved. Daniel picked Arthur up, and the three of them hugged right there, in the sunlit garden, on a Sunday afternoon. A family that made no sense on paper. The widowed CEO, the former cleaner, the motherless baby, but made all the sense in the world in their hearts. And somewhere, perhaps, Helena and Michael looked on and smiled, satisfied that the people they loved had found comfort and love in each other's arms. The news of the engagement leaked before Daniel and Julia could control the narrative. A hospital employee who knew them both commented on social media, and within 48 hours, it seemed all of New York was talking about the millionaire CEO who was marrying the cleaner. The gossip blogs were merciless. Billionaire widower's whirlwind romance with cleaning. Lady months after wife's tragic death. Gold digger or true love. Employee snags widowed boss and fortune. Helena Donovan's family, outraged by hasty engagement. Daniel tried to shield Julia, but it was impossible. She read the comments online, each poisoned word sinking in like a knife. Obviously she planned this. The wife isn't even cold in her grave. What a joke. A rich, vulnerable man and a poor, clever woman. Simple math. Probably seduced him while cleaning his house. Classic gold digger move. Poor Helena died saving her son just for this woman to take her place. Julia read it all in silence, tears falling onto her phone screen. Daniel found her like that one night, sitting in Arthur's room, who was now sleeping peacefully. "Stop reading that," he said gently, taking the phone from her hand. "They're right, Daniel." Her voice was broken. "It's too fast. Helena passed away less than a year ago. People have a reason to think the worst. People don't know anything." Daniel knelt in front of her. "They don't know what it was like to have you hold me together when I was falling apart, They don't know the nights we spent awake talking, the tears we shared, how you saved my son when no one else could. They see a headline and judge an entire life. But what if they're right? Julia looked at him, her eyes red. What if I am an opportunist? What if I've convinced myself I love you because it's easier than going back to my old life? Do you believe that? She was silent. Julia, look at me. Daniel held her face. Do you love me? Yes. Not for money, not for security, not for convenience. Do you love me for who I am? Yes, Daniel. I would love you if you were poor, if we lived in a tiny apartment, if we had nothing. I love you for the way you hold Arthur, for how you cry when you're sad instead of running away, for how you're kind to me even when the world is crucifying me. Then to hell with what they think. The curse word sounded strange coming from him, but effective. Julia, I've spent my whole life worrying about appearances, about what was expected of me. I married Helena because she was the right kind of woman for a successful CEO, good university, traditional family, compatible social class. And you know what? I loved her, but not for the reasons society approved. It was because she was real with me. He stood up, starting to pace the room. And you, Julia, you are the most real person I have ever met. You don't pretend. You don't hide your wounds. You don't try to be something you're not. And I would rather have a real life with you facing judgment than a life of appearances with someone society would approve of. But Arthur, Julia looked at the crib, he'll grow up and hear stories. They'll say his mother was a cleaner, that his family is a scandal, and we will teach him to be proud of his mother. Daniel sat beside her again. We'll tell him how you fought, how you rose from poverty with dignity, how you saved his life when even medicine couldn't. Julia, any child would be proud to have you as a mother. The next few days were the hardest. Helena's mother Eleanor called, furious, demanding explanations. Daniel's brother Rob showed up for a serious talk. Employees at the company whispered in the hallways. Daniel scheduled a meeting with the whole family at the house. They were all there. Eleanor, Helena's mother, her husband Paul, Rob, Daniel's brother, his wife Felicity, and Daniel's mother Isabel. Julia wanted to disappear. She wore her best outfit, simple black pants and a white blouse, but she still felt inadequate among these elegant people who looked at her like she was an intruder. So this is her, Eleanor said, her voice sharp as glass. She was a woman in her 60s, grey hair in an elegant chignon, pearl necklace, rigid posture. The woman who is replacing my daughter. No one is replacing Helena, Daniel said firmly, holding Julia's hand. Julia is convenient, Rob interrupted. He was younger than Daniel, 34, and had always been jealous of his more successful brother. Showed up at just the right time when you were vulnerable? Be careful what you say, Daniel warned, his voice low and dangerous. Daniel, dear, Isabel, his mother, spoke for the first time. She was softer than the others, but her eyes showed concern. No one is questioning the young woman's character, but don't you think it's very soon? Helena has only been gone for 9 months. 9 months and 17 days, Julia said suddenly, surprising everyone. Her voice trembled, but she continued. I know exactly how long it's been, because I also know what it's like to lose someone. I lost my son 3 years, 2 months and 5 days ago, Michael. He was 18 days old. Silence. And my husband left me because I couldn't get over the grief fast enough for him. Tears streamed down Julia's face, but she didn't wipe them away. So I know, Eleanor, I know what it's like to think you'll never be happy again. I know what it's like to wake up and for 1 second forget they're gone, and then remember and feel like you're dying too. Eleanor blinked, her armor cracking slightly. And I am not replacing Helena, Julia continued, looking at each person in the room. How could I? She gave her life for her son. She was brave, loving, and Arthur will always know that. He will always know he has a mother in heaven who loved him so much she chose to give him a chance to live, even if it cost her everything. She wiped her tears on the back of her hand. But Arthur needs someone here too, someone to hold him when he cries, to sing to him, to clean his knees when he falls learning to walk. And I can be that person. Not because I want to replace Helena, or because I'm interested in money, but because I love that baby as if he grew in my own body. And I love Daniel because he's a good man who didn't run from the pain, who honors his wife's memory while trying to build a life for his son. She stood up even though her legs were shaking. If you can't accept that, I understand, but I will not apologize for loving. I've lost too much in my life. And if God is giving me a second chance to be happy, to be a mother, to have a family, I am going to grab it with everything I have. The silence in the room was deafening. It was Isabel who stood up first. She walked over to Julia and for a moment, no one knew what she would do. Then gently she hugged the younger woman. "My daughter-in-law Helena was wonderful," she whispered in Julia's ear, "and I loved her like a daughter. But she's gone, and my grandson needs a mother. If Daniel chose you, if Arthur loves you, then welcome to the family." Julia began to cry again, but this time from relief. Rob scoffed and left the room. Felicity, his wife, shrugged and followed him, but Paul stayed, watching with thoughtful eyes. Eleanor was last. She approached Julia and Daniel tensed, ready to intervene. But to everyone's surprise, the older woman simply touched Julia's face with a trembling hand. "My daughter died giving life to my grandson," she said, her voice breaking. "And the greatest pain of my life was thinking Arthur would grow up without a mother, without someone to love him unconditionally." She took a deep breath. "I don't approve of the timing. I think it's hasty. I think you should wait longer, but—" She looked at Arthur, who was in Daniel's arms. "But I see how that baby looks at you, and I recognize that look. It's the same one Helena used to give me as a child. It's love." Eleanor stepped back, wiping her own eyes. "Take care of my grandson. That's all that matters." And then she left, leaving only Isabel, Paul, Daniel, Julia, and Arthur. When everyone was gone and the house was quiet, Daniel found Julia sitting on the floor of Arthur's room, watching the baby sleep. "You were incredible," he said, sitting beside her. "I was shaking so hard I thought I was going to faint." "But you faced them. Julia, you looked them in the eye and defended our family." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Is it always going to be like this? Having to prove all the time that I'm not the villain? At first, maybe, but over time people will see. They'll see how good you are for Arthur, how you make me happy. And anyone who doesn't want to see it, well, they don't have to be part of our life." Julia closed her eyes, emotionally and physically exhausted. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "And we're going to prove to everyone that when you truly love, it doesn't matter how much time has passed, where you came from, or what others think. True love always prevails." And although the road ahead was still full of challenges and judgments, they had each other, and sometimes that was enough. The wedding would be simple, just close family and intimate friends in the mansion's garden. Julia had insisted, not wanting a spectacle that would fuel more gossip. The date was set for 2 months later, enough time to organize everything, and for Julia to prepare emotionally. But before that, there was something she needed to do. It was a Friday when Julia asked for the day off. Daniel found it strange. She never asked for time off, but didn't question it when she said she needed to handle something personal. Julia took 2 buses to reach Woodlawn Cemetery. Michael's grave was simple, a small white headstone with a little angel carved on it. Michael Miller, our little angel. 18 days on earth, eternity in our hearts. She hadn't been here in almost a year. It was too painful, but today she had to. She knelt on the grass, placing a small bouquet of daisies, her grandmother's favorite flowers. "Hi, my love," she whispered, her voice already thick. "Sorry it took me so long to come. I have so much to tell you." The wind blew gently, as if Michael were listening. "I'm getting married, baby, to a good man named Daniel, and he has a baby, Arthur, who—" She sobbed. "Who I love so much, Michael. I know you understand that from heaven, you know, but I need to say it. Loving Arthur doesn't mean I've forgotten you. You are still my first child, my first love, the person who taught me what it means to be a mother, even if for only 18 days. Tears were rolling freely now. But I was so lonely, my love, so broken. And then this little baby appeared, who needed me as much as I needed him. And I couldn't not love him." She touched the cold stone. "I hope you're not mad at me. I hope you understand that there's room in my heart for both of you. Arthur here on earth and you up in heaven." She stayed there for hours, talking, crying, saying goodbye not to Michael, but to the version of herself that had died with him. The Julia who was only pain and loss. She was allowing a new Julia to be born, one who still carried the scars, but who also carried hope. When she finally stood up to leave, she whispered, "Take care of Helena up there, okay? Arthur's mom. You two be friends, and watch over us here. Me, Daniel, and especially Arthur. He needs all the angels he can get." On the way home, on the crowded bus, Julia felt something shift inside her, a lightness she hadn't felt in years, as if Michael had given her his blessing, as if it was okay to be happy again. Meanwhile, Daniel was also facing his own ghosts. He was in his office when Felicity, Rob's wife, showed up unannounced. She was 35, always impeccably dressed, perfect makeup, blonde hair in elegant waves. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "Felicity, if you're here to try and talk me out of marrying Julia, I'm here to tell you something you need to know." She sat in the chair across from his desk. About Helena. Daniel froze. Helena was unhappy. What? No, she... Daniel, listen. Felicity sighed. Helena and I were friends, confidants. And in the last few months before she got pregnant, she was questioning everything. The marriage, the life you led, whether this was really what she wanted. Daniel felt the floor drop out from under him. You're lying. I'm not. She told me you barely talked anymore, that everything became about the company, about social appearances, that she felt lonely even while married. Why are you telling me this? Felicity leaned forward. Because you're martyring yourself, idealizing a marriage that wasn't perfect. Daniel, Helena loved you, that's true, but you had problems too, and she got pregnant thinking a baby would save the marriage. Stop. Daniel's voice was hoarse. Please, stop. And then she died, Felicity continued, relentless. And you turned her into a saint, the perfect wife in the perfect marriage. But it wasn't like that, Daniel. You were two imperfect human beings trying to make it work. Why are you telling me this now? He asked, tears in his eyes. Because you deserve to be happy without guilt. Felicity's voice softened. You deserve to marry Julia without feeling like you're betraying Helena. Because the truth is, Helena would probably be happy that you found someone who makes you really smile, someone you can be real with, vulnerable, human. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Rob asked me to talk to you, Felicity admitted, but not for the reasons he thinks. He wanted me to convince you not to get married. But I've looked at you these past few weeks, Daniel, and I've seen something I never saw before. You, truly happy, not performing happiness for Instagram photos or business dinners, but genuinely, deeply happy. She stood up. So, marry her. Forget what Helena represented to society, and remember who she really was, human, flawed, and probably wanting you to move on. After Felicity left, Daniel sat alone in his office, processing that bombshell of information. It was true that the last few months with Helena had been difficult. Fights about time, about priorities, about them becoming strangers sharing a bed. But he had buried those memories, choosing to remember only the good times. Because guilt and idealization were easier than admitting his marriage was complicated. That night, Daniel came home and found Julia in the kitchen preparing dinner. Arthur was in his playpen, babbling at a set of blocks. Hi, she greeted, smiling. How was your day? Intense, he admitted, hugging her from behind as she stirred the sauce. And yours? Intense too. She turned in his arms. I went to visit Michael. Daniel kissed her forehead. How was it? Necessary. I needed to say goodbye, not to Michael, but to the sadness that was consuming me. She looked into his eyes. I'm ready, Daniel. Ready to be your wife, Arthur's mother. Ready for this new life. I am too, he said, and for the first time in months, he felt it was true. No more living with ghosts. Let's live for us. They kissed right there, in the kitchen filled with the aroma of home-cooked food, with Arthur giggling in the background. A simple, perfect, real moment. And somewhere perhaps Helena and Michael looked on and knew it was time for their loved ones to move on, not by forgetting, but by living, because life is for the living, and the greatest gift they can give the dead is to be happy in their honor. It was 1 week before the wedding when everything began to fall apart. Rob, Daniel's brother, called an extraordinary meeting with the shareholders of Donovan Holdings. Daniel, as CEO and majority shareholder, was caught off guard. What's going on? He asked, walking into the boardroom to find 6 men in suits waiting with serious expressions. Rob stood up, a folder in his hand. Daniel, the shareholders are concerned about the company's reputation. The news about your engagement is affecting our image. My personal life has nothing to do with this company. It has everything to do with it. One of the shareholders, Mr. Harrison, slammed his hand on the table. We are a family company, Daniel. Our brand is built on traditional values, and you are marrying up the... Be careful with your next word, Daniel warned, his voice low and dangerous. A former cleaner, Rob completed. Months after your wife's death, the blogs won't stop. Clients are asking questions. 3 contracts were cancelled last week. Daniel felt his blood run cold. So what do you want? For you to postpone the wedding, Mr. Harrison said, for at least a year. Let the dust settle. Then, if you still want to marry her, do it quietly, without fanfare. And if I refuse, Rob gave a cold smile. We have enough votes to remove you as CEO. Daniel looked around the room. Some shareholders avoided his gaze, embarrassed. Others stared him down with determination. You're bluffing. Try us. Rob crossed his arms. Daniel stood tall. I have a counteroffer. I'll buy out every single one of you. Everyone who votes for my removal, I will buy your shares. For double their market value. Shocked silence. Are you crazy? That would cost $180 million, I've calculated, Daniel said coolly, and it would be worth every penny not to have to look at your faces every day knowing you tried to blackmail me. Daniel, be reasonable, Rob started, but the confidence had left his voice. No, you be reasonable. This company was built by my grandfather, my father, and me. I pour blood into this firm. And you think you can tell me who I can and cannot marry? He slapped his hands on the table, leaning in menacingly. I am marrying Julia on the scheduled date, and if anyone here has a problem with that, my lawyers are already drafting the buyout contracts. You decide. Stay on as partners with a CEO who knows every bolt in this company, or walk away with a lot of money in your pocket, but zero influence on the future of Donovan Holdings. One by one, the shareholders murmured their agreement, all except Rob. You'll regret this, Rob said, standing up. She'll destroy you, Daniel. She'll take everything you have and— Shut up, Daniel roared, surprising even himself. You don't know Julia. You know nothing about her. And if you ever mention her name again, I swear I will remove you from this company, brother or not. Rob recoiled, shocked by the intensity of Daniel's anger. The meeting ended, but the damage was done. Daniel knew the situation at the company was fragile, and worse, he knew news of the confrontation would leak, fueling more gossip. He didn't tell Julia. He didn't want to worry her before the wedding, but Julia noticed. What happened? She asked that night as she folded Arthur's clothes. Nothing, just company stuff. Daniel, I know you. Something happened. He sighed, defeated. He told her everything. The meeting, Rob, the threat, his counteroffer. Julia turned pale. $180 million. Daniel, you can't spend that fortune because of me. It's not because of you. It's for us, for our family. But the company, your brother. Tears began to form. Daniel, maybe they're right. Maybe we should wait. Let things calm down. No, he held her hands firmly. We are not letting them win, Julia. I love you. I am marrying you. And if I have to buy half the company to do it, then so be it. But no buts. He kissed her. You are worth more than any business, any contract, any amount of money. Julia broke down crying and Daniel held her, both of them exhausted from the constant battles they had to fight, just for the right to be happy. 3 days before the wedding, another bomb exploded. Rick, Julia's ex-husband, showed up. Julia was leaving the grocery store when she saw the man leaning against her car. He was 35 now, shorter hair, a trimmed beard, wearing expensive clothes she knew he couldn't afford when they were married. Rick? She could barely speak, the shock paralyzing her. Hey, Ju. He smiled, but it was a fake, calculating smile. Or should I say, future Mrs. Donovan. What do you want? Julia asked, her heart pounding. To talk. About the past. About Michael. He stepped closer. About the money you're about to marry into. Julia felt sick. You don't get to talk about our son. Not after you abandoned me when I needed you most. I was hurting too, Julia. Rick protested, but without real emotion. And now I see you're doing okay. Really okay. Engaged to a billionaire. Get out of my way. Easy. Easy. He held up his hands. I just came to suggest that since you're going to be so well off, maybe you could share a little. After all, I suffered from Michael's loss too. It's only fair I get some compensation. Are you extorting me? Julia asked, incredulous. I'm asking for what's mine. Let's say $500,000 for starters. He smiled. Or I could go to the papers and tell my side of the story. About how you were an unstable mother, how you blamed yourself for the baby's death, how you had deep depression. Imagine the headlines. Unstable woman who lost baby now wants to raise millionaire's son. Julia felt the world spin. Tears of rage and humiliation burned her eyes. You're disgusting. I'm practical. Think about it, Ju. $500,000 is nothing to him. But for me, it's a fresh start. And for you, it means I disappear and never come back. Julia looked at this man she once loved, the father of her child, and recognized nothing but a greedy stranger. Get lost, she said quietly. Julia. I said get lost, she screamed, drawing stairs in the parking lot. You're not getting anything, nothing, because if you threaten my family, if you try to slander my name or Daniel's, I will go to the papers first. I'll tell them how you abandoned a grieving wife, how you never once visited your own son's grave, how you're only showing up now because you smell money. Rick recoiled, surprised by her ferocity. So you choose. Disappear now. and I forget this conversation happened. Or you push this and I make your life a living hell." Julia was shaking, but her voice was steel. "And unlike you, I have the resources now to hire the best lawyers. So decide." For a moment, Rick looked like he might argue. Then he saw something in Julia's eyes, a resolve she didn't have when they were married, and he knew she wasn't bluffing. "Your life is going to be hell anyway," he spat, turning to leave. "You'll never be accepted in his world. You'll always be the cleaner who got lucky." And he left, leaving Julia trembling in the parking lot, tears of anger and fear rolling down her face. When she told Daniel, he wanted to go after Rick immediately. It was Julia who held him back. "No, he's not worth it. We've wasted too much energy on people trying to destroy us." "Julia, he blackmailed you." "And I said no." She held his face. "Daniel, in 3 days we're getting married. In 3 days I officially become part of your family, Arthur's mother, your wife. I'm not letting ghosts from the past ruin this." Daniel hugged her, marveling at the strength of this woman the world insisted on underestimating. "You are incredible. You know that? I'm just tired of fighting. I finally want to be happy." "Then let's be." He kissed her forehead. "Despite everything, despite everyone, let's be happy." And though storms still surrounded them, they had each other. And sometimes that alone was enough to face the world. The wedding day dawned with a flawless blue sky, as if even the universe was conspiring for everything to be perfect. The mansion's garden was decorated with white flowers and delicate arrangements. Only 30 people, the true family and close friends who mattered. Julia looked at herself in the bedroom mirror. The dress was simple, white without much volume, elegant but discreet. She had insisted on something that didn't look ostentatious, that wouldn't fuel more gossip about the cleaner wanting to look like a princess. Isabel entered, carrying a jewelry box. "May I?" she asked gently. Julia nodded, nervous. Daniel's mother took a delicate pearl necklace from the box. "This belonged to my mother. She wore it at her wedding, I wore it at mine, and Helena wore it at hers." Isabel paused. "And now it's yours." "I can't accept this," Julia whispered, touching the pearls with reverence. "Yes, you can." The older woman fastened the necklace around Julia's neck with gentle hands. "Because you are family now, and more importantly, you gave my son his life back. Daniel was just existing, Julia. You made him live again." Tears rolled down Julia's face, ruining the discreet makeup she had applied. "Thank you for accepting me, for giving someone like me a chance." "Someone like you?" Isabel held her hands. "A strong, brave woman who survived devastating loss and still has the capacity to love. Any family would be blessed to have you." Outside, Daniel stood in the garden with Arthur in his arms. The 10-month-old baby was dressed in a tiny tuxedo, looking around with curiosity. "Your mommy is going to look beautiful," Daniel whispered to his son, "and we're going to take care of her, right? We're going to make her feel like the most loved woman in the world." Rob appeared beside him, hands in his pockets. They hadn't spoken since the disastrous meeting. "So you're really going through with it?" Rob said, not looking at his brother. "Yes." An uncomfortable silence. "I was jealous," Rob admitted finally. "Of you. Always have been. You were the firstborn, the favorite, the successful one. And when Helena died, part of me thought that finally, you weren't perfect. That your life had fallen apart like mine." Daniel turned to his brother, shocked by the raw honesty. "Your life hasn't fallen apart." "Yes, it has. Felicity is filing for divorce. She found out I've been having an affair." Rob gave a bitter laugh. "And here you are rebuilding your life, finding love again, being happy. So I wanted to destroy it. I wanted to make you suffer like I was suffering." "Rob, but I was wrong." The younger brother finally looked at Daniel, his eyes shining. "Julia is good for you. She makes you happy in a way Helena never did. And Arthur, that kid loves her. Any idiot can see that. Did you come to apologize?" "I came to say that I vote with you, at the company, always." Rob held out his hand. "And I came to say that, despite everything, I love you, man. And I want you to be happy." Daniel shook his brother's hand, then pulled him into a hug. "Thank you," he whispered. The music began. It was the hush-a-bye lullaby that Julia sang to Arthur, arranged for violin and piano. Everyone stood, and Julia appeared. She walked alone down the garden path. No father to give her away, no procession, just her, the simple dress flowing, a bouquet of daisies in her hands, Michael's flowers, walking toward her future. Daniel felt tears burn his eyes. She was radiant, not because of the dress or makeup, but because of the way she smiled, a genuine, happy, hopeful smile. When Julia reached the improvised altar, Daniel held out his hand. She took it, trembling slightly. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "You too," she replied, laughing nervously. The officiant, a pastor who knew their story, began, "We are here to celebrate not just the union of two people, but the union of two souls who found solace in each other after devastating storms." Daniel and Julia did not arrive here by the conventional path. They arrived through pain, through loss, through the love of a child who needed them both. And that, my friends, is the purest kind of love, one born from mutual need and blossoming into partnership. He continued, "Daniel, do you promise to love, respect, and honor Julia? Do you promise to be her partner in all storms and all celebrations? Do you promise to see her not as the woman who worked for you, but as your equal, your companion, the mother of your son?" "I do," Daniel said, his voice firm. "And Julia, do you promise to love, respect, and honor Daniel? Do you promise to be his partner? To never hide your strength for fear of overshadowing? To care for Arthur as if he were your own blood?" "I do," Julia replied, tears already falling. "Did you write vows?" the pastor asked. Daniel nodded, pulling a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "Julia, when we met, I was broken. I had lost the love of my life and was watching my son fade away, unable to help him. You appeared like a miracle disguised as a cleaner, with a voice that calmed storms and a heart that had survived traumas that would destroy most people." He cleared his throat, emotional. "You taught me that it's possible to love again without betraying memories, that it's possible to rebuild without erasing the past, that it's possible to be happy without guilt. So I promise, I will make you happy every day. I will protect you from the cruel judgments. I will love you loud enough that you never feel small again. And I will raise Arthur with you, not as a favor you're doing me, but as equal partners on this journey. You are his mother, you are my wife, and I am the luckiest man in the world." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Julia took a deep breath, no paper, speaking straight from the heart. "Daniel, I spent 3 years dead inside, functioning but not living, smiling but not feeling. When I started singing to Arthur, I thought I was helping him, but the truth is he saved me first, and you," her voice broke, "you gave me back something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. The hope that good things can still happen, that good people still exist. That love didn't end just because one story did." She held his hands tighter. "So I promise, I will love Arthur with every fiber of my being. I will honor Helena by being the best possible mother to her son. I will support you, challenge you, and love you even when it's hard. And I will never ever let petty people define who we are. Because we are love, imperfect, complicated, born from pain love, but real love. And that's worth more than any fairy tale." The pastor smiled, also emotional. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Daniel, you may kiss the bride." And he did. A long, deep kiss, full of promises of shared futures and healed pasts. In Isabel's arms, Arthur clapped his hands and shouted, "Mama, Dada," drawing emotional laughter from everyone. When they separated, Daniel took Arthur from his mother's arms and placed him between them. "Now," he said, looking at Julia, "now we're a real family." And there, in the garden decorated with white flowers, under the flawless blue sky, 3 people who had been shattered by tragedy became a whole family, united not by blood or social convention, but by something much stronger, true love, forged in the fire of suffering and tempered by the courage to start again. The party was intimate but joyful, simple, delicious food, genuine laughter, awkward dancing. And when Daniel and Julia shared their first dance as husband and wife, ironically to the tune of the lullaby, there wasn't a person there who didn't know. This was a love that would conquer any storm. Because true love doesn't give up. It never gives up. The months following the wedding were a period of adjustment and discovery. Julia was now officially Julia Donovan, a name that still sounded strange when she said it. Adapting to the new reality wasn't simple. "You don't have to ask my permission to use the credit card, Julia," Daniel said for the 10th time, exasperated but amused, when she shyly asked if she could buy new clothes for Arthur. "I know, but it feels weird to spend so much money. It's our money now, and Arthur is growing fast. He needs clothes." Julia still got up at 6 a.m. out of habit, ready to start work. Daniel would gently pull her back to bed. "We hired a housekeeper to clean the house, remember? You don't have to do that anymore." "But I feel useless." "Then find something that makes you feel useful. Go to school, start a hobby, I don't know, but stop trying to secretly clean your own house. It was Isabel who suggested it. Why don't you go back to school, get your GED, go to college? You have a sharp mind, Julia. The idea terrified and fascinated Julia at the same time. She had dropped out of high school at 16 to work. The prospect of returning to books after so long was intimidating. But Daniel enrolled her in a GED prep course, and slowly, Julia discovered something wonderful. She was smart. She always had been. She just never had the chance to prove it. Arthur was also growing and changing. At 1.5 years old, he was toddling around the house saying simple words and had a vibrant personality. He called Julia Mommy naturally and Daniel Daddy. To him, this had always been his family. One afternoon, while they were playing in the garden, Arthur pointed to a photo of Helena that Daniel kept in the living room. "Who?" the boy asked. Daniel and Julia exchanged a look. This moment had to come eventually. "That's Helena," Daniel explained, kneeling beside his son. "She's your other mommy. Your mommy in heaven." Arthur frowned, confused. "I have two mummies." "Yes," Julia said softly, joining them on the floor. "Helena carried you in her belly. She gave you life, Arthur. She loved you so much that she chose for you to be born, even knowing it was dangerous for her." "She's an angel now?" Arthur asked, with the simplicity of childhood. "Yes, honey. She's your guardian angel. And you're my mommy here?" "I am." Julia kissed his chubby cheek. "I'm the mommy who teaches you to walk, who sings you to sleep, who kisses your boo-boos." Arthur processed this with the seriousness of a small child trying to understand the world. Then he shrugged and went back to playing with his trucks, accepting this complex reality with an ease only children can manage. Daniel and Julia laughed, relieved. "Eventually he'll have harder questions," Daniel said. "And we'll answer them honestly," Julia agreed. "Always. He has the right to know his whole story." A year after the wedding, Julia found out she was pregnant. The positive test left her in shock. She and Daniel hadn't actively planned another child, but they weren't preventing it either. Still, seeing those two lines transported her instantly back 3 years to Michael, to the tragedy. She panicked. "What if it happens again?" she sobbed in Daniel's arms that night. "What if I lose this baby too? I won't survive it, Daniel, not again." "It won't happen," he said firmly, though he was just as scared as she was. "You're healthy, we'll do all the tests, have the best medical care." But Michael was born extremely premature because of complications the doctors didn't detect. "This time will be different. I promise I will take care of both of you." The pregnancy was obsessively monitored. Julia went to the doctor weekly. She had constant ultrasounds. Every little twinge was a source of worry. Arthur, now almost 3, would put his little hand on his mother's belly and say, "Hi, baby. I'm your brother. I'm going to take care of you." And Julia's heart melted even amidst the fear. At 7 months pregnant, exactly the gestational age Arthur had been, Julia went into premature labor. It was terrifying. She was rushed to the hospital, Daniel by her side, both reliving their worst nightmares. "Not now," Julia pleaded, crying. "Please, baby, stay in a little longer. Just a little longer." The doctors managed to stop the contractions with medication. The baby, yes, it was a girl, was fine, but Julia would have to be on absolute bed rest until the birth. "I don't want to be on bed rest," she protested. "Arthur needs me. Arthur needs you and his little sister to be healthy," Daniel corrected. "We'll manage." And they did. Daniel took a leave of absence from the company, to the outrage of some conservative executives. Arthur spent hours lying in bed next to Julia, watching cartoons with her. Isabel came every day to help. They were tense weeks, but finally, at 39 weeks, Julia went into labor naturally. The baby girl was born wailing, pink and healthy. 7 pounds, 1 ounce. Perfect. "Helena," Julia whispered, holding her daughter for the first time. "Your little sister is named Helena Julia Donovan." Daniel was crying openly, holding his wife and daughter. "Thank you," he said, "for our family, for this princess, for everything." When they brought Arthur in to meet his sister, he looked at her with comical seriousness. "She's small," he observed. "You were tiny just like that too," Julia said, laughing through her tears. "But I'll take care of her." Arthur gently touched his sister's tiny hand. "I'll be the best big brother in the world." And there, in that hospital room, the family that had been born from tragedy was complete. Not replacing those they lost, never replacing, but honoring their memories by living fully. When Helena, the baby, was 6 months old, Julia earned her GED. Daniel, Arthur, now almost 4, and the baby were in the audience when she received her diploma. "I'm so proud of you," Daniel said, kissing her. "It's never too late to start over," Julia replied, holding the diploma like it was gold. She had plans to go to college for a degree in education. She wanted to work with children, especially those in vulnerable situations. She wanted to turn her pain into purpose. "You're going to be amazing," Daniel said with conviction. Donovan Holdings, under Daniel's leadership, now as sole owner, having bought out all the disgruntled investors, launched a scholarship program for the children of low-income employees. The program's name, the Helena and Michael Project, in honor of those who couldn't live, but whose memory inspired change. Julia, against all odds and judgments, had not just survived tragedy, she had thrived. She had a family, she was getting an education, she had purpose, and every night, before bed, she would walk into the kids' rooms, watch Arthur and Helena sleep, and whisper, "Thank you, Michael. Thank you for teaching me how to be a mother. Thank you, Helena in heaven, for trusting me with your son. I promise I'll never let either of you down." And in the silence of the night, it was as if two angelic presences were there, smiling, blessing this improbable family that was born from ashes and became a living testament that you can start over, you can love again, you can be happy without guilt, because life goes on, and the best way to honor those we've lost is to live fully in their memory. 3 years later, Arthur was almost 7, Helena was 3, and the Donovan family's life had found a comfortable rhythm. Julia was in her 3rd year of college, majoring in education, and volunteered at a daycare for underprivileged children. Daniel had expanded the company, becoming a leader in sustainable construction. It was a normal Friday when the phone rang. Daniel was in his home office, Julia was making dinner, the kids were playing in the living room. "Hello?" Julia answered, the phone wedged between her shoulder and ear as she stirred the pot. "Julia Miller, or I'm sorry, Julia Donovan?" an unknown female voice asked. "Yes, this is she. Who's speaking?" "My name is Dr. Patricia Lemos. I'm a geneticist at Columbia Presbyterian. Could you come in as soon as possible? We have something important to discuss regarding Michael Miller." Julia's world stopped. The spoon fell from her hand. "Michael? My son Michael, who passed away over 7 years ago. Yes, ma'am, please, it's important. Can you come in tomorrow at 10 a.m. and bring your husband if possible?" Julia barely slept that night. What could they possibly want to discuss about Michael after so much time? Daniel held her, trying to soothe her, but he was just as unsettled. Dr. Lemos's office was modern, with diplomas on the wall and an artificial plant in the corner. The doctor was a woman in her 50s, with grey hair in a ponytail and square-rimmed glasses. "Thank you for coming," she began, motioning for them to sit. "I know this must be jarring, to get a call about your late son after so much time." "What's going on?" Julia asked, her hands trembling. The doctor opened a file. "We are conducting a long-term study on cases of extreme prematurity. Part of this study involves reviewing old medical records and, in some cases, running post-mortem genetic tests on preserved tissue." Julia turned pale. "In Michael's case, we discovered something." Dr. Lemos paused. "He had a rare genetic condition called mosaic Edwards syndrome. It's a chromosomal abnormality that is incompatible with life in most cases. Babies with this condition rarely survive more than a few days." "I don't understand," Julia whispered. "What does that mean?" "It means that Michael never would have survived, Mrs. Donovan. No matter what you did, how much you prayed, how good the medical treatment was. His condition was terminal from conception." The words took a moment to sink in. Daniel squeezed Julia's hand. But the doctors said it was because of the extreme prematurity," Julia protested. "And it was, but the prematurity was caused by the genetic condition. Your body recognized something was wrong and tried to expel the fetus. It's a natural defense mechanism, as cruel as it sounds." Tears began to fall down Julia's face. "I'm telling you this," the doctor continued gently, "because reviewing your records, I see you were treated for severe depression after the baby's death. And according to conversations with your current therapist, who authorized us to contact you, there is a persistent guilt, a feeling that you somehow failed as a mother." "I did fail," Julia sobbed. "I couldn't save him." "No, Julia." The doctor leaned forward. "You couldn't have saved him. No one could have. Michael was 18 days old when he passed, which is a miracle given his condition. Most babies with mosaic Edwards die within hours. He lived for 18 days because you fought for him, because you sang to him, because you loved him with a strength that defied biology itself." Daniel was crying now too, holding Julia against him. "So it wasn't my fault?" Julia asked, her voice like a scared child's. "It was never your fault, my love," Daniel answered. "Never." The appointment lasted another hour. The doctor explained technical details, showed charts, offered psychological support resources. But all Julia could process was one thing: it hadn't been her fault. For 7 years, she had carried an invisible guilt. The feeling that if she had eaten better during pregnancy, rested more, noticed the signs sooner, maybe Michael would have survived. But there were no signs to notice. There was nothing she could have done differently. When they left the hospital, Julia sat in the car and wept. She wept for hours, Daniel just holding her, letting her process years of guilt evaporating. "I didn't kill him," she repeated between sobs. "I didn't kill my baby. You never did. You loved him until his last second, and he felt that love." That night, Julia went to the cemetery for the first time in years. She knelt in front of Michael's headstone. "Hi, my love," she said softly. "I just found something out. You were special, even more special than I knew. You were a warrior who fought against all the odds. And her voice broke. "I finally understand that it wasn't my fault, that I did everything right, that I loved you just the way you needed." The wind blew gently like a caress. "And I promise to keep honoring you, not with guilt or sadness, but by living, by loving your siblings, by being the best mother I can be, because that's what you taught me to be." Daniel stood beside her in respectful silence. "Thank you, Michael," Daniel said, also speaking to the grave, "for lending your mom to us, for shaping her into the incredible woman she is. I'll take care of her forever. I promise." When they returned home, Arthur and Helena ran to hug them. The babysitter had been watching them. "Mommy, are you okay?" Arthur asked, always perceptive. "I am, honey." Julia hugged him tight. "I'm better than I've been in a very long time." That night, after putting the kids to bed, Daniel and Julia stood in the garden under the stars. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," she answered. "For the first time in 7 years, I feel free. The guilt. Daniel, I didn't even realize how much it was suffocating me until I felt it go. You were always an amazing mother. To Michael, to Arthur, to Helena. I just hope you believe that now too." Julia turned to him, her eyes shining with tears, but they were tears of liberation. "I believe it, I finally believe it." They kissed under the starry sky, two survivors of storms who had learned to dance in the rain and now appreciated the sun. The revelation about Michael didn't erase the pain of the loss. It never would. But it transformed the nature of that pain. It was no longer a pain poisoned by guilt, but a pure pain of missing him, the kind of pain that is bearable, that can even be beautiful in its honesty. And Julia finally understood something fundamental. She had not failed as a mother. She had never failed. The love she gave Michael in his 18 days on earth was perfect, complete, enough. And now she could love Arthur and Helena without the shadow of guilt, without feeling like a traitor, without questioning if she deserved this happiness. She deserved it. She always had. And somewhere, among the stars, perhaps Michael and Helena, the first, smiled, satisfied that the people they loved had finally found peace. 5 years later. It was a sunny Sunday morning, one of those perfect mornings that feel like they were special ordered. Arthur was 12 now, a tall, smart kid who loved soccer and math. Helena was 8, a chatty, artistic girl who spent hours drawing. And there was a third, Benjamin, a 4-year-old with Daniel's same mischievous smile and Julia's observant eyes. Julia had graduated from college 3 years ago and now ran a daycare center for low-income children, funded by Donovan Holdings. Project Welcome served 200 children, offering not just education, but meals, medical, and psychological support. "I turned your pain into purpose," Daniel always said, full of pride. And it was true. Every child Julia helped was a way of honoring Michael. Every mother she counseled, every family she supported, was her way of saying, "I survived, and you can too." Today was a special day. It was Arthur's 12th birthday, but it also marked nearly 12 years since that dawn in the NICU when a cleaner started singing and saved a premature baby's life. The party was in the mansion's garden, not as large as the house warranted, as Julia always insisted on keeping things simple, but full of love. Arthur's friends, Daniel's colleagues, staff from the daycare, neighbors, family. Isabel, now 73 but still active, helped arrange the dessert table. Rob, who had completely reconciled with his brother after his own divorce and subsequent life reflection, played with Benjamin. Even Eleanor, Helena's mother, was there. She had become a present grandmother, visiting regularly, taking the kids on outings. The pain of losing her daughter would never pass, but she had learned that Arthur, Helena, and Benjamin were gifts her daughter had left behind. Arthur directly, the other two indirectly by bringing Daniel and Julia together. In the middle of the party, Daniel stepped onto a small, improvised stage and asked for everyone's attention. "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate my son's birthday," he began, his voice emotional. "Arthur, come up here." The boy, already almost as tall as his father, walked up awkwardly as everyone clapped. 12 years ago, you were born weighing just over 2 pounds, fighting for every breath. Daniel put his hand on his son's shoulder. "The doctors didn't know if you'd survive. I didn't know if I could raise you alone after your mother. After Helena left us," he paused, clearing his throat. "But then a woman appeared, a woman the world would call simple, ordinary, insignificant, a cleaner." Daniel scanned the crowd for Julia. She was already crying, knowing where this was going. But this woman had something that all the doctors, all the expensive equipment, all the science didn't have. Love. Pure, genuine love, from someone who understood pain and chose to give comfort. Julia covered her mouth, sobbing. "And today, 12 years later, I look at you, Arthur, and I see a healthy, happy, intelligent boy. I see a loving brother who protects Helena and Benjamin. I see a son who has 2 angels in heaven, Helena, who gave you life, and Michael, who taught your second mother how to love, and a family on earth that adores you." Daniel stepped off the stage and went to Julia, taking her hand and leading her up too. "Julia, you saved my son. You saved me. You gave me 2 more wonderful children. You turned an empty house into a home, and I don't have enough words to thank you." He knelt right there in front of everyone and pulled a small box from his pocket. Julia gasped. "Daniel, you already gave me a ring. This one is different." He opened the box, revealing an eternity band set with stones. "That one was my grandmother's, and it was perfect to start our story. But this one I chose specifically for you. It has 4 stones. The first is a diamond, for Arthur. The second is a pink tourmaline for Helena. The third is a blue sapphire for Benjamin. And the fourth," his voice cracked, "the fourth is an emerald for Michael, because he's part of our family too." Julia was sobbing uncontrollably now, as was half the crowd. "You don't have to ask me to marry you again," she managed to say through her tears. "I'm already your wife. It's not a proposal." Daniel slid the ring onto her finger, next to the heirloom engagement ring she never took off. "It's a renewal of vows, a promise that the next 50 years will be just as incredible as the last 12. He stood up and kissed her, and the crowd erupted in applause. Arthur, Helena, and Benjamin climbed onto the stage too, hugging their parents in an emotional group pile. "Now," Arthur said, his voice already starting to change, "a complete family photo." And someone snapped a picture that Julia would later frame and place next to that old photo of Helena and Daniel. 2 families, 2 eras, one single thread connecting everything: love. Later, after the party had emptied out, and only the immediate family remained, Julia found Daniel in the garden looking at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, hugging him from behind. "About how strange life is." He turned, wrapping her in his arms. 12 years ago, I was at rock bottom. I had just lost Helena. I was watching my son die. I saw no way out. And I was dead inside," Julia completed. "Just existing, not living. And then you walked into a hospital hallway singing." Daniel smiled. "And you changed everything. I think we saved each other." "No." He kissed her forehead. "You saved me. You taught me it's possible to rebuild, that it's possible to honor the past while embracing the future. That love isn't a finite resource. The more you give, the more you have." Julia leaned her head against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. "Do you think they're proud of us?" she asked. "Helena and Michael?" "I'm sure of it." Daniel looked up at the sky. "I think they're up there having a beer and laughing at how we managed to mess everything up, but still make it work in the end." Julia laughed, the image a comforting one. From the garden, they could hear the kids playing inside. Arthur showing his siblings a new video game, Helena singing while she drew, Benjamin asking for more cake, even though he'd already had 3 pieces. "Our family is loud," Daniel observed. "Our family is perfect," Julia corrected. And it was. Not perfect in the flawless sense, but perfect in that it was exactly what they needed. A family built not by blood or convention, but by choice, by love, by 2 people who refused to give up even when the world said it was impossible. That night, after putting all the children to bed, Julia did her usual routine. She went into each room, adjusted blankets, kissed sleeping foreheads, whispered, "I love you," In Arthur's room, she paused an extra moment, looking at this boy who had grown so much. It was hard to believe he was once that tiny baby fighting for every breath. "Thank you for letting me be your mom," she whispered. "It's been the greatest honor of my life." Then she went to the office where Daniel was working on a project. "Come to bed," she said. "In a minute. I just need to finish this." "Daniel," she closed his laptop. "Come to bed." He laughed, letting himself be pulled. In their room, a room that was once his and Helena's but was now theirs, filled with photos of their current family, they lay down together. "Are you happy?" Daniel asked in the dark. "More than I ever thought it was possible to be again," Julia answered. "And you?" "Complete." He pulled her closer. "For the first time in over a decade, I feel complete." And there, in the comforting dark of their room, two hearts that had been shattered beat in sync. Two survivors of storms who found harbor in each other. Two people who proved that second chances exist, that love can be born from tragedy, that families can be built in unconventional ways and be just as valid as any other. Their story didn't start as a fairy tale. It started with pain, loss, and endless tears. But it ended, if love stories ever truly end, with something more valuable than any fairy tale ending: reality. Real, imperfect, complicated, but genuine love. And as they slept, holding each other, the wind blew softly through the open windows, carrying with it the tune of a lullaby that once saved one life and ended up saving many. Some people believe in angels. Julia and Daniel knew they existed. Some wear wings, others wear a cleaner's uniform. Some live in heaven, others walk among us. And sometimes, just sometimes, those angels meet and create miracles. Because true love always finds a way, always.